Welcome to Front Office Pros. Today, we've got a special episode for you. That's right. We're going to be breaking down Dynasty and salary cap implications of the Davante Adams and Amari Cooper trades.
Hike!
So Joe and I are going to be talking about each team and, these trades, although, we're squarely talking about Davante Adams and Amari Cooper, there are ripple effects across all four teams and how this could impact players that you have on your roster from these various teams. So we're going to be talking about all four teams. We're going to start with the Davante Adams trade, Joe, and talk about the New York Jets. Obviously, in the immediate term, this is huge for Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams played a number of years in Green Bay. We know they have synergy together. For me, first thing that comes up at Aaron Rodgers, I think Aaron Rodgers in the immediate term is going to do well. But I think what it means is I think Aaron Rodgers does, in fact, come back next year. I mean, he could decide to retire whenever he wants to, but he does have an option bonus with the New York Jets next year. He's currently under contract for one more season. He has a $23.5 million cap hit. After that, from 2026 to 2029, the New York Jets have $21 million in void money. That will be a dead cap hit. So when you think about Aaron Rodgers going forward, I mean, he's not getting any younger, Joe. He is 41, will be 42 next year. I mean, Tom Brady was able to play later in his career, played really well. I think Aaron Rodgers now becomes a greater win now piece that a team can use in a 1 to 2 year window. But is he really an elite quarterback? Is this somebody like, what do you do with a guy like Aaron Rodgers? Do you agree? You think he's going to play one more year now? Because there's probably that question of, do you really want him? If it's dysfunctional with the Jets, what do? They have Robert Saleh anymore. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I do think he could be a good win now piece. I mean, he doesn't give you that rushing upside that he once had. He doesn't scramble around it. Given his age, he doesn't really scramble around it anymore, but he can still move around and make plays. And I tell you, like, his arm still looks good. I mean, that Hail Mary was traditional. Rodgers Hail Mary gets it to Lazard in the end zone. So, like, the arm strength and everything's still there. And if anything, he's finally got a guy that's just going to be on the same page with him. He's going to be able to get the ball out quickly. I think that offensive line is going to look better for the Jets, just because he will be able to get rid of it faster. So might just have to change the game a little bit for him. But, I do think you're right. I agree. I think he could, be in line to come back and play one more year. And I think having a guy like being able to reunite and play with Adams might even just rejuvenate him that much to make him want to come back for next year.
Yeah, it's just kind of interesting because when you look at the Jets cap space, believe it or not, after acquiring a guy like Davante Adams, they're scheduled to have $45 million in cap space. I actually thought they'd be hurting a little bit more than they really are. So, they did inherit the salary. They paid some of the salary for Davante Adams. That was a part of the trade. I think that's a lot of the reason why it made sense that he went to the Jets. Because people don't think about it from the financial component of it,
right.
But that does pay a big deal for these other teams receiving the contract.
Yeah, well, I think that's also why the Jets were able to get away with not giving the Raiders exactly the compensation they wanted, just because they were able to take on the full contract. And I don't think other teams in the NFL would have been willing to do that.
No, definitely not. And now talking about Davante Adams, he's an interesting one, Joe. He kind of, again, immediate term, Davante Adams is a win-now asset. If you're in a dynasty league or a salary cap league, depending on his contract, he's a guy just like the Jets are doing. You're putting all your chips in. You're going to be able to acquire this guy. Now, he's 32 years old. He'll be 33 next year. He's got 3 years left on his contract. But because the Jets acquired him, although they have all the salary, he only has an $8.3 million dead cap hit next year. So my thinking is, I don't know what your thoughts are. I think he's going to retire with Rodgers. I don't think he's going to – there's no way. If he plays the third year, Jets are going to cut him. There's no way they're going to keep him on the books because right now he'd be scheduled to have a $38 million cap hit in the next 2 years. That's astronomical for a 33, 34-year-old receiver. Not going to happen. So he'll probably stay with Rodgers one more year, and they're going to ride out in the sun together. And I think those two are basically immediate. We saw what the impact they had in Green Bay. So to me, they're a good combination. What are your thoughts on Davante Adams? That's my thinking as far as dynasty salary cap implications.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I could definitely see the two of them, riding off in the sunset together. Adams went out and played without Rodgers, showed that he could still, be an elite receiver without Rodgers being his quarterback. I know that was kind of a heavy criticism. I think he went ahead and proved that, but then, realized the last couple of years here that it's just not as fun without playing a guy, without playing with a guy like Aaron Rodgers at quarterback. Just somebody that, knows him so well and they have that connection. And that makes sense. And I mean, as far as his contract, the Jets are going to figure out how to restructure that and shorten it and get him paid and to where he's not going to be continued to get paid down the road, once he hits that age that you were talking about.
So let's talk about the implications of the receiver room at large now. In particular, I think the guy that you and I are most concerned about at this point would be wide receiver Garrett Wilson, former first-round pick from Ohio State. Obviously, he's done very well with the limited quarterback play he's received. But if you look at it right now, he's entering into his third season. After this, the Jets will have to decide whether or not they're going to accept his fifth-year option, which they will. There's no doubt that they will. But at this point, then, you're looking at this year and next year, you've got the combo of Davante Adams and Aaron Rodgers, who they have the synergy together. I think now he's third wheeling it now. And then after that, then he's got his fifth-year option with no Aaron Rodgers, no Davante Adams. Jets basically hit the reset button. And then what happens there? Does Garrett Wilson decide to resign and extend with the Jets? But then who's the quarterback? Does he try to force his way out like other receivers have tried to do, but maybe he's not successful? What are your thoughts on Garrett Wilson? It kind of creates a murky situation for him, at least for the foreseeable future in the next 2 years. And then I would imagine they're going to accept the fifth-year option. But what do you do about Garrett Wilson?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I think he's going to still be a productive receiver for you over the next 2 years. But, you mentioned what happens after Rodgers. But even without Aaron Rodgers, like, he was just hyper targeted. As long as he's kind of the standalone guy there, no matter who his quarterback is, he was getting the targets, wasn't elite fantasy production. But to the point where I don't know if Garrett Wilson is that guy, if he is that alpha receiver, for a team. I just time and time again, he hasn't quite showed it. I don't know. Also, he just doesn't seem to have it, as far as like mentally to know the game well and find the open spots. Him and Rodgers can't be on the same page. So I don't know if he'd have that issue with other quarterbacks because they might not be as picky as Rodgers. But if they get some sort of a veteran, he's going to need to be more keen on that. But I think being able to play with a guy like Davante Adams, will help with that. But you're not wrong. His immediate fantasy production is going to be lower than your expectations were for him. And then, after these couple of years that Rodgers is there, it could be tough, but maybe you just stay the course with him.
So I guess what do you do if you're a Garrett Wilson owner? If you're a rebuilding team, is this the time to try to part ways with Garrett Wilson? If you are a competing team, do you part ways with him? Is he a guy you try to acquire? He's kind of in this situation we just don't know. I mean, who knows? Yeah. I mean, it could be that his value stays the same, but I just don't see that. I think Adams is going to suck up a lot of targets. And then unless Aaron Rodgers just gets past happy and they don't run the ball, which they haven't been running the ball, it could very well be the case. I mean, you did see at one point, was it Jordy Nelson and Davante Adams, right, at the time? I think they played together, right? I mean, both of them were able to be successful. I believe Davante was the guy. So I don't know. What do you do with a Garrett Wilson at this point?
Yeah, he's tough because, I could see a rebuilding team wanting to go away from him. But at the same time, like, if I was a contending team, I don't want Garrett Wilson. Like, he's not going to be that difference maker for me. And he's the wide receiver too there. He was getting hyper targeted. And even when he was getting hyper targeted, like, he was still kind of disappointing for fantasy. Like, I know he finally found the end zone, but now all the red zone targets that he was getting are now going to go to Davante Adams. So those are out the window. So I think, unfortunately, like, if you're a rebuilding team with Garrett Wilson, you might just be stuck with him because if I'm a contending team, I don't want him. Like, I'd rather have Davante Adams. He's not going to be that game-changing piece to take my team to the top.
More than likely, too, again, in a salary cap league, he's on a rookie contract as well. So you're going to have to pay a little bit more because he's on a cheaper contract versus if you trade for Davante Adams.
I think, the question with Garrett Wilson will be, if if you're in a league contract and he's on a rookie contract, what do you do when that rookie contract goes up? That to me, that is the real question. And I'm not so sure you would want to, re-sign him or keep him at that point.
No. I think honestly, if you have Garrett Wilson, you're really in a jam, and I think you just have to ride it out. I mean, maybe
Yeah.
if you're a team that really wants to go on the upside of Garrett Wilson and you want to be bullish, go for it. This could be an opportunity and a window to be able to acquire him, but it's a tough situation.
Yeah, I mean, if you do like Garrett Wilson and you're interested in acquiring him, I mean, now's the time. I mean, the Garrett Wilson owners are going to be absolutely panicking and not sure what to do with him. And if you feel good about him moving forward, I mean, you could go ahead and buy him, and his stock is going to be a lot lower than it was, just a couple of weeks ago.
So let's talk about let's rapid fire here, Joe. Got a lot more to get to here, but we're going to talk about a few other players here. The receiver room in large is going to be impacted by the New York Jets. Allen Lazard, kind of former Green Bay Packer, he has been way more productive than I think either you or I anticipated. But hey, he's got the familiarity with Aaron Rodgers. Yep. He still has 2 years remaining on his contract with the New York Jets and then a void year. But his cap hit next year is $13 million, only a dead cap of 6.5. If they decide to cut him as a pre-release, they can save $6 million. If they do post, they could save up to $11 million. Now, the Jets are not in cap problems, if you will. So maybe they don't feel the need to do that. So it'll be interesting. Aaron Rodgers has a lot of pull and sway in that organization, it seems like. So Allen Lazard's his guy. 100%. So I have to think that Allen Lazard's there. And if that's the case, then then he's the third guy and Garrett Wilson's the fourth fiddle.
Yeah. I mean, it just has been proven time and time again, man. Like Rodgers, he trusts the guy he trusts. And if you're not in his circle of trust, you're not going to get the ball. And yeah, well, Lazard has been, more productive than we thought, but that connection is real. Obviously his value takes a hit, but he's not going anywhere. He's still going to be a part of that offense.
Another guy here we're going to be talking about here, wide receiver Mike Williams. He signed a 1-year deal, $10 million. Got $8.3 million guaranteed at signing, but his cap hit is only $2.724 million. A lot of the money, as far as his dead cap goes, was related to 4 void years. For whatever reason, the Jets did that to fit him under the salary cap. So here's the thing. I don't know about what you think, but in my mind, if another team acquires him, you're looking. I don't think they're going to have to pay all that much, like we had talked about offline here. So it's possible he gets traded. I think he gets cut. I don't think that anybody is going to go after him. I know they just said that, hey, they're willing to trade him. I think he gets cut. I think he goes somewhere else. If I'm a Mike Williams owner, I'm holding on. I would stash him, or I would even try to go get him, because let's say he gets cut, he goes to the Chiefs. Right? I mean, light and day difference. We don't know where he's going to go. We've seen him be productive in Los Angeles with the Chargers. Who knows? He could even go back there. He could really go anywhere at that point if he gets cut, which I think he will. So to me, a guy like Mike Williams, his value is absolutely at the bottom of the barrel. Especially right now, people are like, in my mind, you can't be too short-minded with this. I understand right now, like he's an afterthought. He will go somewhere. I don't think he's going to not go anywhere and just be buried on the Jets depth chart. He is on a 1-year deal, and then he's a free agent, and he is 30. He's going to be going on 31. So it's like, from a dynasty standpoint, with all the injuries this guy's had, I don't know how much longer. He's kind of an immediate guy. It's a win now team. If I could scoop him up for something small, I would do it. Yeah,
it's definitely a competing team move, like you mentioned. Honestly, I'm shocked that Mike Williams is even still active and not injured and out for the season already, but he is active and currently healthy. Although it looked like he might have gotten a concussion on that last throw of the game there from Rodgers. But I agree. I mean, if he is out there, I think he's a interesting piece you could add, because he will go to a team and he'll go to a competing team himself, and he'll definitely have a lot more opportunities than he's currently going to have with the Jets.
One more guy here I'm just absolutely devastated about. Wide receiver Malachi Corley, rookie out of Western Kentucky. I drafted him. I know you and I were both somewhat high on this guy. Drafted in the 3rd round. Guy hasn't been able to see the field. now after this, his dynasty value absolutely plummets. I hope he goes somewhere else. Maybe he gets cut. Maybe he gets traded. But at this point, that looks like a burn pick if you decide to go for Malachi Corley like I did. I don't really know what you can do. I don't think you can really salvage that pick at this point.
No, I mean, unfortunately, I think you just got to hold him in. Maybe once Rodgers is gone in a few years, maybe he has value, or like you said, maybe it's an Elijah Moore situation where they end up trading him away. That's kind of just what you got to hope for at this point, because it's right now it's currently pretty murky for him.
Well, and he's a 4-year deal, and it could very well be that's a front office cleaning sweep here. Already we saw Salah's gone, Joe Douglas could be gone, could be a whole new regime. They don't know who Malachi Corley was. It's just a bad situation for him. I feel bad for him because I did think he's buried. But if you have him, I don't know what you do. I think, like you said, hold him on your taxi squad and hope he turns out to be something.
Yeah, I mean, no doubt he was talented and a yards after catch guy. And Rodgers doesn't like young receivers that he doesn't trust either. So really just got to hope he goes elsewhere right now.
I'd be willing to move on, but you probably would be telling me to say, whoa, if we don't talk about your guy, Breece Hall. It's interesting about Breece Hall here. I do believe that the offense could change to be more of a passing offense. But here's the thing, Joe. He's in his 3rd year of his 4-year rookie contract. Next year, he'll be in a 1-year deal remaining. And they got Braylon Allen kind of being involved in the rotation. Breece Hall is younger. He'll be 20. He's 23 this year. He'll be 24 next year, be a free agent. In 2026 at 25 years old. But after that point, Rodgers and Davante Adams, and from our prediction, will be riding out in the sunset. What happens with Breece Hall? It's kind of interesting because he was always, or recently, he's been seen as the number 1 dynasty running back. Does this kind of shift things for Breece Hall and some of the emergence of Braylon Allen that we didn't expect before too? Obviously, that doesn't necessarily change due to the fact that Davante Adams coming in, but it does. It's a part of the puzzle here.
Yeah, honestly, I mean, I think no matter if Breece Hall's been able to do this with the Jets, if he were to go somewhere else, I think his value possibly only increases. But I don't right now this season, Downing's being the play caller. He came out from the Titans. They like to run the ball. You already saw. I mean, I know it was against the Bills and they have an iffy run defense, so maybe it's just game plan oriented. But Breece Hall saw a decent amount of run carries, despite Rodgers throwing to 35 times. He still got a decent amount of workload, and he was the primary rusher. Braylon Allen wasn't a part of it. So, I still like Breece Hall going forward, and I just think if the passing game improves, so will Breece Hall's opportunities as well.
And honestly, this could be a window for you to acquire Breece Hall because here's the thing, in my opinion, right? I think Joe Douglas could be gone. He could be on the outs. The owner could decide, you don't think so?
I just don't think it matters because basically they're letting Rodgers call the shots and get whatever he wants. So I think you just keep Joe Douglas there while Rodgers is there, and then you get a new GM maybe once Rodgers isn't on the team.
I guess, but I don't think the head coach is going to stay after this year.
Honestly, I mean,
do you, Ulbrich? Do you think he'll stay?
No, they're going to get a new coach, no doubt.
I just think Woody Johnson could decide to clear house if that's the case, or if Rodgers wants to have a different front office. If he has that big of a voice in that room. In my opinion, all I'm saying is you could have regime change. If you have regime change, they did not draft Breece Hall, and it could very well be the case that they don't want to pay a running back top money.
Nobody wants to pay running backs.
Right, so he could become a free agent, could go somewhere else, which then we don't know what happens to him. But regardless, like you say, I think he's a talented enough running back. I wouldn't be that concerned. Yeah,
and honestly, I mean, if he goes on a team with a better offensive line and likes to run the ball, I mean, he could be even better.
So next, we're going to be talking about the Las Vegas Raiders. The Raiders obviously decided to trade away Davante Adams, no longer on the team, received a 3rd-round pick, conditional that could become a 2nd, which if you look at the terms of the conditional, I don't see it happening. I don't know about you, but I don't see the Jets being in the AFC Championship, but I don't see him being an all-pro. But, hey, you never know. It could happen. So, or do you think it will?
I think it could happen. I don't think it's out of the realm of
Really
possibilities.
interesting. See, I think it's very unlikely.
Mm.
But
I think it's possible.
are you enjoying this episode so far? Well, if you are, subscribe to our YouTube channel, smash that like button, and hit the notification bell for upcoming videos. We do videos throughout the year, so you're not going to want to miss what we have in store. Interesting. Irregardless, this Raiders team is an absolute shambles. It's hard to really look at things because if you look at it, from the receiver room standpoint, I think probably the best guy you got is Jakobi Meyers. Jakobi Meyers, though, was he has he's got 2 years remaining, including this year, but next year he's got a $14.9 million cap hit with an 8.3 million. 14.9 cap hit with an $8.3 million dead cap hit. And he's got some void years on that. Here's the thing: Raiders, they're bare bones. I don't think. Would you really want a guy like Jakobi Meyers at this point? I mean, he's the number one guy, but
Brock Bowers is the number one guy.
Brock Bowers, yeah. So Brock Bowers, I agree. He's the one asset you want from a dynasty standpoint. Obviously, they draft him in the first round. He got a 4-year plus a 5th-year option. I think he will continue to be relevant. Michael Mayer hasn't been able to, be a part of the team. He had to leave the team for, various family issues or what have you. So at this point, Brock Bowers is. I'm glad you brought him up. He's really the only guy you want on this team.
Yeah.
At this point.
Yeah. Like you said, Jakobi Meyers is technically the wide receiver 1, but just I don't know. Just
Brock
really
Bowers is really the wide receiver 1 at this point.
Yeah, and he's getting the heavy target share. Like outside of him, I really don't want any piece of it. And they're a mess. I could see, Antonio Pierce being gone now. Like Adams and Max Crosby were his 2 biggest advocates, and one of those guys is now gone.
Right. And I think you're going to see with the Raiders. I think at the end of the day, there's not really much to say about them at this point. They are a bad team. They are going to probably have to reset. They're going to draft a quarterback. They're going to have to redraft a lot of the offensive pieces in this room, even some of the defensive pieces that they've had. They've got to do a full rebuild at this point. I wouldn't be surprised if they decide to say, "Hey, Antonio Pierce, we gave you a shot. We're getting off the train, and Mark Davis is going to go get a big head coach. Maybe a guy like Mike Vrabel. Right now, Tom Brady is considered a part of the ownership. Could have that Patriots influence.
What about Bill Belichick?
Could be Bill, but would Bill really want to go there? You know what I mean? Like he wants to win. This team is in such shambles. I don't know.
Yeah, but but he could do more with less. I guess. I don't know.
It's possible. Yeah. So next trade we're going to be talking about is wide receiver Amari Cooper. He went to the Buffalo Bills. They traded a 3rd-round pick. Basically, that was the crux of it. There was a 6th and a 7th-round pick exchanged as well. This is a big move for the Bills. Wide receiver Amari Cooper. His contract situation made it very easy for the Bills to do it because of the restructure that the Cleveland Browns did. Amari Cooper is effectively $806,000, less than $1 million. Now, he is on a 1-year deal. He is 30 years old. Bills are kind of in cap concerns. They've only got $10 million next year. I don't necessarily see the Bills re-signing Amari Cooper, but it doesn't mean we know the cap can change, Joe. You could see Josh Allen or some of the other veterans restructuring. They could cut a guy like Von Miller. There's a lot of things they could do if they wanted to keep Amari Cooper. But he's definitely we talked about Davante Adams earlier. At 30 years old, he's definitely a win-now piece. I think he has a lot of juice, and he's a guy I'd be targeting for win-now teams.
Yeah, 100%. Amari Cooper value was low with the Browns, but it's completely changed on the up and up with the Bills. You just saw it. They really, as much as they wanted to just say how nice it was not having like a go-to number 1 option and kind of the distraction
everybody eats.
Josh Allen, not saying he had to like focus on one guy, and like I said, everyone eats and passing it around. As lovely as that sounded, they missed a number 1 guy because they don't really have one. Keon Coleman, he's kind of been inconsistent as a rookie. Shakir, I honestly was shocked that he was so underutilized in this Jets game, being that he was actually out there playing.
Well, I think he was dinged up though.
I get that, but you're out there and playing. I just can't believe they didn't use him, and he wasn't a big part of the offense because we saw the impact of what it looked like without him on the field, and it wasn't very good. So, and I think only having another outside weapon like Cooper is going to help Shakir eat more in the slot too.
Yeah, I mean, I think Amari Cooper could do very well. I mean, he's underrated. He's been underrated his entire career. So I think, and we saw what Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs were able to do. So now that Amari Cooper becomes that de facto one, they needed somebody to be able to say, okay,
they needed
we're
a true
giving you the
alpha.
ball. Yeah, because they can't be giving Mac Hollins a throw in the end zone and drop off his brick hand. So to me,
but he caught it against the Jets.
I'm talking about the slant in the end zone. It was right there, and he dropped it.
Well, he caught a touchdown, Steve.
Okay, well, there's neither here or there. I'm just saying you and I agree that they need a de facto one.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. I don't want to talk about it too much, but I think would you rather have Cooper or Adams in a win now scenario?
Adams.
Even from okay, but not thinking about it from a dynasty standpoint. You're just saying you think he will have the immediate impact Davante will be versus.
Yeah, from a win now, I mean, who's going to be the piece? Adams. I mean, Cooper and Allen are probably going to need time to gel. Guess who doesn't? Adams and Rodgers. They have the rapport. Yeah, I mean, they're going to hit the ground running. I mean, yeah, that's why. It's just I'd much rather have Adams just be reuniting with Rodgers, and the Bills still like to run the ball. And Josh Allen is still going to have to hit Amari Cooper as well.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I think if Amari Cooper doesn't sign with the Bills don't re-sign him, that'll be the first time he's become a free agent, right? Like I think he was traded in all his different stints.
He keeps getting traded, and then the team ends up giving him a contract after he gets traded. So,
I mean, it's possible the Bills give him a contract. I kind of doubt it. Initially, I feel like they're going to want to see how Josh Allen.
I thought it was funny. I saw Cowboys fans saying, "How in the world did the Browns get more compensation for Cooper now than what they got from the Browns when they traded him?"
Well, but here's the thing. I'm glad you brought that up because they're not looking about it from a contract and salary cap standpoint. You got to remember when the Cowboys traded him to the Browns, he was making $20 million a year. I want to say it was like a 5-year deal at one point. So they sucked up all of that. Whereas in this situation, the Bills are getting him for less than $1 million.
Yeah,
so that's why you're going to.
Yeah, the Browns made it happen. They like you said, they restructured the deal and basically it was like, look, this guy is available for trade. Come and get him, and he's got a juicy contract.
Yeah, I mean, in essence, it's kind of like a cap dump situation where they don't have to pay the cap and they get a good player. Had it been where we're talking about a similar contract situation, Davante Adams, they weren't getting a 3rd-round pick. They would have gotten a 4th or 5th-round pick. The contract was so favorable.
Yeah, right.
So looking at the other Bills options there for receiver, this is a team that's going to possibly gel over time. Let's talk about the rookie Keon Coleman. He's shown some flashes. He's 21 years old. He was a 2nd-round pick. He's got 4 years under his belt. This one doesn't concern me as much, Joe. I mean, from a dynasty standpoint, I'd still be interested. He's shown some flashes. He's got some spark. He just is raw, really raw. I just think he needs time to develop. And I don't think you're really expecting much of him out of this year anyways. I think, you're looking at probably next year or the year after that. So, maybe if I don't know. If I'm a Keon Coleman owner, I would think that I'm not really expecting him to give me dividends right away. So I'm not sure anything really changes.
Yeah, I mean, unless you're a contending team and you thought, Keon Coleman was going to give you more than he currently is. But yeah, otherwise, you just stay along for the ride. And if anything, having a guy like Amari Cooper and being able to watch him and his route running could only improve him as a player moving forward.
And then as far as some of the others, your favorite receiver on the team, Joe, wide receiver Khalil Shakir. There's no knock. Shakir has been a great player. He has great yard after catch ability. Out of Boise State, former 5th-round pick. He's got 2 years remaining in his contract. So this year and then next year, I would think the Bills are going to try to keep Shakir based on his ability. Do you think this changes since Shakir was almost becoming this one, with the lack of a number one? Now Amari Cooper comes in. You think what happens to Shakir from a fantasy perspective?
Well, I think this should help him because to me, Shakir's not an outside guy. He's definitely more of a slot receiver. So I think this should help, with more emphasis on another threat on the outside. Let's face it, nobody was, concerned about Mac Hollins on the outside, really, So putting a guy like Amari Cooper does, and I think you should open up middle of the field and some slants and stuff for a guy like Khalil Shakir. And his biggest asset is the yak, and that'll allow him to go ahead and eat after the catch.
See, I wonder if they'll use Keon Coleman on a slot versus Khalil
That
Shakir.
doesn't make any sense. He's a big-bodied guy.
I know.
And
I disagree with you. Stuff I've seen on social media, people talk about that he's a big slot. He doesn't have that ability to separate. But if he's being
he
covered
doesn't.
on
But that's why you just
linebacker,
throw jump balls to him.
but if a linebacker's on him though, then you do have that separation.
Nobody's putting a linebacker on Coleman. That's just idiotic. Everyone plays nickel. They're going to have multiple DBs out there. A linebacker is not going to be on him. If anything, there's going to be a linebacker
don't shoot
on
the
Kincaid.
messenger. Don't shoot the messenger. I'm just showing you from what I've seen on there from other people that comment about it.
I get that, but if they put him in the slot, a safety or a nickel corner is going to be on Coleman. They're not going to put a linebacker on him. Although if he's not that fast, maybe a linebacker could cover him.
Yeah. One big disappointment here, wide receiver Curtis Samuel. He signed a 3-year deal with the Bills. And people were, 3 years, $24 million. Right now his cap hits 3.4. Next year he's going to be $9 million, then additional $9 million. He's not going anywhere for at least 2 years. Third year, I think he'll be gone. I think it's effectively a 2-year deal. I do think the turf toe is affecting him, though. People aren't talking about that. I mean, you don't think so?
It could be, but he just seems like an afterthought in the offense. I mean, look, if he couldn't get looks when Cooper wasn't on the team, he's not going to be getting looks when Cooper is on the team. I just think this is going to make our good friend Dustin happy because he was not excited about Curtis Samuel, thought he was going to be pretty irrelevant for fantasy, and so far he's been absolutely correct.
Rumor has it that our good friend Dustin wants to have him cut, but I don't see that happening. But they're using him as too much of a gadget player. They need to use him more like a traditional receiver.
I think that's just a gadget player is what he is. I thought they're going to utilize him at running back more. Like, he's not good as a traditional receiver. He needs to just be a kind of a change of pace gadget guy.
Well, I'll be curious to see what Joe Brady and the offense decides to do with him. But he definitely becomes an afterthought for at least this year. Maybe, if he becomes more.
He's just going to be available if injury. I mean, to me, he's a great replacement. If Shakir continues to be injured or gets re-injured, like he's a good replacement for a guy like Shakir.
Now, I think one of the bigger beneficiaries in this, and we haven't talked about him, is tight end Dalton Kincaid. Obviously he's on a rookie contract. He's got 3 years remaining plus a 5th-year option. So he's going to be there for a while with the Bills, only 25 years old. He's been getting a lot of attention from defenses, because he's effectively been viewed as the number one guy. I think this opens things up for Kincaid. And I think he could also be a great beneficiary from this Amari Cooper trade.
Yeah, it could be. Like I said, similarly, with Shakir, opening up the middle of the field, maybe they can hit more of those seam routes, with Kincaid. But I still have my doubts on Kincaid. I just don't see it. I don't think he's an alpha. I don't know if he's ever going to be a top tier tight end in this league. I really just
because you think he lacks separation, or he lacks athletic ability, or he's too soft, or what do you?
Yeah, I just don't think you look at other tight ends and like the true alphas, and then you look at Kincaid play. I just don't see it.
Interesting. I don't know if I agree with you. I think it's too early to say that. Tight ends take a while to develop. I know you look at a guy like a Sam Laporta, who you want to look at, but even Laporta after his sophomore season, he's been hampered by injuries. He hasn't been the same guy. So I do think it takes a while for tight ends to develop. So I think it'd be too early to say Kincaid is an afterthought.
I'm not saying he's an afterthought. I just think people need to temper back their expectations. I don't know if he's ever going to be that, tight end, fantasy tight end one that everyone had hopes of him being.
Now, do you think a guy you love here with James Cook, he's got 2 years remaining, will be a free agent here in 2026 on a rookie contract? Obviously, a part of his value is the receiving and the rushing game. We saw, honestly, some would say, is Ray Davis a better fit for the offense, more of a downline runner compared to James Cook dealing with that turf toe. Do you think this affects some of his receiving output now that Amari Cooper's there? I mean, he was still relevant when Stephon Diggs was there, so you could say that it shouldn't really change much. But I guess what is your overall thoughts on James Cook?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it should change much. Honestly, the Bills are his only worst enemy, just because I don't think they give him enough touches overall. But I don't think the Cooper coming over really impacts that. If
Yeah,
anything, now Ray Davis could eat more into his opportunities.
I told you about that, by the way.
I think more than Amari Cooper, that would be the concern. But I still think James Cook should be the number one running back on this team.
I agree, and Joe Brady has shown his he wants to run the ball. He wants to run the ball. He's shown that. I agree.
Yeah.
I think the Ray Davis emergence might be more of a concern than the acquisition of Amari Cooper.
But at the same time, I mean, Ray Davis has been there, and they've chose Cook. But this is also just the risk of you get hurt, and then you can see what the other guy does, and then your job can be gone. It's just that's what can happen.
Last guy we were talking about the Bills is their quarterback, Josh Allen. Josh Allen has not been up to the billing of what we normally know of Josh Allen. He's been the preemptive number one quarterback in fantasy year in, year out. But he hasn't thrown an interception yet this year, which is pretty impressive because that's what he's known for. Kind of Brett Favre type where he just is thrown up for grabs, but he's not been doing that as much this year. Now he's got Amari Cooper. He has that number one option that he lost with Stephon Diggs. Do you think this boosts? I mean, Allen was already seen from a Dynasty and salary cap. So if you had Allen, I think he's the number one guy. I mean, people thought maybe Mahomes. Mahomes looks like he's taking a complete step back. So this only is going to help Josh Allen.
Yeah, it only will help Josh Allen. I still think, that's not going to, I don't think this is going to change Joe Brady's philosophy that they want to run the ball more, which has led to, less passing attempts for Allen and then making it so Allen doesn't have to play hero ball and put himself in the positions to throw those interceptions and create the turnovers. They've been trying to eliminate that. I mean, heck, he's still fumbling the ball. They've gotten lucky and gotten it on him. But as far as like you said, he's not throwing the interceptions, taking it out of harm's way. But I don't think, Amari Cooper can only help him. Obviously, it can't hurt him at this point.
So let's lastly talk about the Cleveland Browns. They traded away Amari Cooper. They got that third-round pick in return, and they swapped 6th and 7th-round picks. But, Joe, this team is kind of in desperation right now. Similar to the Raiders, I don't think they're in as bad a shape. Obviously, we're not talking about the defenses. We're just purely talking about the offense at this point and the impacts of this trade. First off, I mean, a guy I think is kind of interesting is wide receiver Jerry Jeudy of the formerly of the Denver Broncos. I know you've got a bad taste in your mouth due to that he was a Denver Bronco and how bad he was, but he was traded to the Browns, and he did sign a contract extension with the Browns. He has a contract until 2027, so he's effectively on the team for the next 4 years. Now, his dead cap is alarming. $41 million this year.
Yeah, they gave him heavy guarantee on the deal. So
I mean, they really can't effectively get out of this deal until 28. Now, you could say he's in quarterback jail, should I say?
Purgatory
right now. Yeah, purgatory as far as what to do. But he becomes the one, and targets are going to be vacated now.
Yeah, he's not a one though. That's the problem.
So what do you do with a guy like Jeudy? Do you think his career is basically evaporated and you're basically like just get rid of him as much as possible?
I mean, Amari Cooper couldn't get things done for fantasy with DeShaun Watson. I don't think Judy's going to. I mean, he's not a one. Like he's not a contested catch guy. When the going gets tough, he's not the guy. He needs to be absolutely wide open and running in wide open spaces. I don't know. The Browns offense, like I mentioned to you, like once this trade happens, does this mean Nick Chubb could possibly get traded? He's an impending free agent this upcoming year. I don't know what happens to this Brown offense because they did this to themselves. I mean, DeShaun Watson has been absolutely terrible. They fully guaranteed his contract. They can't get out of it. I don't know how many Browns pieces I'd want. Like
Now you're going all over the board.
Me,
So wait.
Get back,
You're talking about Nick
circling,
Chubb. You're talking about Watson.
I'm circling back to Jerry Jeudy here. If
Okay.
I could trade away Jerry Jeudy in hopes of maybe somebody like you who thinks he could step up, I'd absolutely trade him.
Okay. So you would basically say, take this opportunity to get anything you can out of the guy and get rid of him.
100%. Yeah, because I just DeShaun Watson's not going anywhere, and honestly, I don't think he's getting any better. I mean, maybe if I just don't think him and Stefanski are a good match. Maybe if a new coach comes in there and a new philosophy, maybe somebody gets more out of him. But I don't know. I just don't know how a guy goes from being a top 10 quarterback in the league to like all of a sudden
not even top 10, top 5, I'd say.
I mean, do you realize the Browns are the only offense in football that hasn't scored 20 points? They haven't even scored 20 points in a game. I mean, it's just, and now they don't have Amari Cooper.
Yeah, I mean, Watson right now, I mean, when you talk about DeShaun Watson, his value is absolutely to the bottom of the barrel. I mean, and here's the thing. It is probably, and this is not hyperbolic, it is probably the worst contract in sports history, besides maybe Barry Bonilla or Monella, whatever this guy's name is for the New York Mets. Bonilla, yeah. Bobby, there you go. So I'm just like, they gave him a fully guaranteed contract. He's at $27.9 million as a cap hit this year. The next 2 years, he has a whopping $72.9 million, and they got a void year of $26.9 million on top of it. I trust Adam Schefter. He does this. He's been in the business a lot longer than I have. I cannot rack my brain how he could possibly think that was a good move by the Browns. Like, they came out and said, oh, they did it for salary cap management. It made sense. Yeah. Based on everything I understand, it makes zero sense. The guy can't play ball. Why would you purposely take base money? I guess it's already guaranteed anyways, but you basically restructured that, converted into a signing bonus, and passed it down later years. I just don't understand. I mean, I guess I could say, like, well, the salary cap's always going to increase, so I guess, and
then they get to roll over some cap from this year over, I guess. I mean, I don't know, but yeah, he did say it was just from a cap saving standpoint is why they did it. I mean, like you was kind of
the only thing I could think about is that it's fully guaranteed, and there are no contracts that are fully guaranteed. So usually you're converting base money that isn't guaranteed and converting it into it. So that's the only way I could possibly think. But the Browns are in such bad shape. I mean, they have to play the guy. I just don't understand how they can't at this point because, I mean, if you're an owner, would you be wanting to see this guy on the sideline collecting $200 million? I mean, that's sickening. So I think unless a new head coach comes in, it's very clear. We've seen enough games, like you said. Kevin Stefanski and his offensive playing style does not fit with DeShaun Watson. It just does not.
But, yeah, and this also just goes to show, like, because they had to keep DeShaun Watson on the field, like they literally could not keep Joe Flacco because fans would have just been clamoring for Joe Flacco because he obviously could run the Stefanski offense.
No, they couldn't. So, I mean, at this point, though, based on his cap situation, like you can't trade him. You can't cut him. I mean, if they were to cut him, you're talking about $172 million.
Yeah, people thought the Broncos situation with Russell Wilson was bad. This is on another level.
Yeah, I mean, you can't do it. I mean, there's just not. I just don't see it happening. I just don't. So it's just like they have to figure out how can we make this player work. I don't know. It's one of those situations. I mean, if you have DeShaun Watson, I mean, hopefully you didn't pay him big money in a salary cap league. If you have a dynasty, you may have cut him at this point if you're not in a super flex league.
Yeah, I mean, I know the owner in our salary cap league, man, he also gave him fully guaranteed contract, and he's as stuck as the Cleveland Browns are.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so he's in terrible shape. So, Browns are a dumpster fire at this point, and I don't know what else can be done. You talked about Nick Chubb. He's on a 1-year deal. He's 29 years old. His cap hits $6.275 million. I think this is the end of the line for Nick Chubb. He had a gruesome injury. They could trade him. And I think that the other team would, I'm not sure exactly what the other team would receive. I think it's roughly about $1.5 million that they would receive if they got Chubb. I could see Chubb getting traded. At this point, maybe they would. I mean, at this point, like you said, like what's the point in having him unless you want
To
to
me, like
retire as Cleveland Brown?
once you trade a guy like Amari Cooper, it just opens the door for other players to be left, and they're almost just acquiring capital to kind of try to rebuild this offense back up.
Yeah, so I mean, I could definitely see Nick Chubb going, but I mean, he's a win now player, but we don't even know. I mean, they're talking about him coming back from IR.
Yeah, I mean, they've opened up the practice window, so he's going to be back soon. The question is, what kind of version of Nick Chubb do we get coming off of that gruesome injury? I mean, we know that it generally the first year of an injury like that usually isn't good, and it's usually the second year. Outside of what Breece Hall was able to do last year, but his Chubb's injury was way worse than what Hall went through.
So another guy who could be kind of interesting here, tight end David Njoku. Now, I know you're not as interested in the guy. He's on a 2-year deal with the Browns. He's 28 years old. And his dead cap this year is $30 million. Next year, $20.8 million. He's not going anywhere. He will definitely stay with the Browns at this point. They don't have a lot of options, so he could get a ton of targets. He's relatively young. What do you do with a guy like David Njoku? Brown's situation is bleak. Do you try to trade for him? Hopefully he gets better. Watson's going to be the quarterback more than likely going forward. You just try to see, like you said with Jeudy, are you using that same philosophy? If someone's willing to give you something, just trade him and get the most out of him. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I would not be trying to trade for Njoku, despite I know like the tight end landscape is rough. I get that the situation looks good for him. I just don't trust DeShaun Watson, and him and Watson have never really been on the same page. Joe Flacco is what made finally Njoku like the tight end asset we all thought he could be for fantasy. So I think I would either hold him in hopes that he does get the volume, or go ahead and like see what you can get for him. If people are, I know you in a video you're saying to go out and potentially trade for him. So
I think I think immediately could be interesting. I guess it depends on how much you have to give up for him. I'm not looking to give up the farm,
right.
And I don't think you'd have to, but maybe you would. It really all depends on the owner.
Yeah, I mean, if the owner wants too much, definitely don't give up the farm. But if you can get them, if you can get them in a buy low window, maybe other people think like me, just don't believe in DeShaun Watson getting it to him. I think I'm in the minority, though. I think most people are excited about the potential, target opportunity for him.
Well, not to mention, Joe, I didn't even mention this, but the Browns are at negative $40.9 million in cap space next year. They are just circling the drain at this point right here. It's stinky over at the Cleveland Browns. Some few other players here we're going to talk about. Wide receiver Elijah Moore, a guy who you and I both, I think, had some promise. Obviously played near Jets, didn't do so well. He's in the final year of his rookie deal, believe it or not. He'll be a free agent next year. Has had some concussion issues. Don't see him coming back to the Browns. Don't know if they'll try to resign. They may again clear house, have a new GM, new head coach. Is he a guy from a dynasty standpoint you kick the tires on, see if you can't get him? I mean, he's now the wide receiver too. Amari Cooper is no longer there. What are your thoughts on Elijah Moore?
Yeah, I don't know what to think about Elijah Moore, honestly. I don't think, he is interesting, but I don't know if I'd be trading for him, but if he was somehow like on the waiver wire, I do think, he could be like a speculative ad, but I mean, he's not a guy I would be actively trying to acquire by any means.
I mean, I don't think he'd be on a waiver wire in dynasty leagues, to be honest with you. I mean, maybe people decide to cut him because he hasn't been all that good. I'd be kind of interested in him. Although he hasn't shown much in his 3 years, so I guess the question is how good could he really be? I guess but he was on the Jets when they were really bad, and he was on the Browns when they weren't so good. So it's like, have we really seen him in the best opportunity?
No, that was the thing. I was excited for him once he was with the Browns, and back when I still had hopes for DeShaun Watson, but now just him, just literally, it's just just seeing him not being able to play. I don't know. It's tough for me to envision anybody like Amari Cooper was disappointed for fantasy, and he's a good on flow wide receiver.
All right, our final player we're going to be talking about, wide receiver Cedric Tillman of the Cleveland Browns. He's in his second year of his rookie contract at 4 years. Former third-round pick out of Baylor. Hasn't had a lot of playing opportunity, but now that Amari Cooper is no longer there, a lot of buzz that he could be someone who could be pretty good. He's a different receiver, right? He doesn't have the same profile that Elijah Moore and Jerry Jeudy have. He's more of a taller, big-bodied guy. Do we kind of see an emergence of him, and do you have any interest from him from a dynasty perspective? Probably a guy who, honestly might have been on your taxi squad, guy who you really weren't that interested in. Kind of we talked about earlier, but a guy like Malachi Corley, you drafted him hoping he's just sitting him in your taxi squad, or, you drafted him with your third-round pick. You're hoping that something happens. What are your thoughts on Cedric Tillman?
Yeah, I think I'm more excited about him just because, like you said, he's more of that big body guy. Maybe Watson can just throw him a 50-50 ball and hope he can go ahead and get it. That's the thing. Like, Elijah Moore and Jerry Jeudy are very similar wide receivers in my eyes. So that's the one reason makes me less excited for Elijah Moore. But I do think, Tillman being a younger receiver and a bigger body guy, maybe he is able to get something going with DeShaun Watson.
I think it's interesting too. I mean, you got to remember, when DeShaun Watson was successful, and I'm not saying they're the same player, but you have the build of a DeAndre Hopkins, right? He was a type of player that Watson really excelled with. Cedric Tillman's a more of a big-bodied receiver like a DeAndre Hopkins. That could be a better fit than Elijah Moore, who's kind of a, he doesn't have a high ADOT. He's kind of a short target guy. And then obviously Jeudy, I guess, is mostly known for his route running and speed, but he also has a ton of drops. So maybe Tillman, ends up being a guy who could end up being good for that offense.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, both, like, to me, Elijah Moore and Jerry Jeudy are both kind of guys that you need to get in space in order for them to catch it. They're not really going to get those contested balls, but I think that's where, Tillman, I think he's a pretty good route runner, and I think he'll be able to get those contested catches, rather than those guys.
So that does it for this episode. We talked about a lot of players and the implications of these trades. It's not just about Davante Adams and Amari Cooper. These are ripple effects that affect all these teams, and that's the NFL for you. And we wanted to talk to you about it from a dynasty perspective and salary cap, because based on these contracts, it matters, and how you end up deciding how many years you want to sign these players for. It all kind of comes together. Thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time.